Well, good morning. My chat room won't open. Here we go. Good morning. Let me see. And oh, come on. Stop that. YouTube's being weird. I had to pop out the chat room in order to see it. It wouldn't load. Humph. And there is no option to restore the chat, which I can usually use to pop it back in. Well, good morning and welcome to another podcast. I wore myself out yesterday when I came on the spur of the moment to rant and rave about Afghanistan. Good morning, Ralph. I have someone in the chat room. Well, I have this here book to talk about. Oh, of course, there's all kinds of glare. Let me see if this makes a difference. Not really. A Flickering Reality by F. David Pete. I'm not good at names. I had to look at it. On my screen, it's backward. It's, see, copyright 2011. It's about filmmaking from the perspective of a cinematographer and movie buff. And, well, let's see. F. David Pete, back cover. I like the lion. I get really upset when people don't hold a book up long enough for me to focus and see it, so I try to hold a book up longer. F. David Pete, a former theoretical physicist, is the author of over 20 books on everything from superstrings to Native American science and chaos theory to Jungian synchronicities. In 2000, he founded the PARI, that's P-A-R-I, Center for New Learning in the medieval village of Pari in Tuscany. Now, I'm assuming he did not go back in time to the Middle Ages, but that village was established and inhabited in the Middle Ages. And he has his own publishing house, perrypublishing.com. And that's who published this book. Sorry, my nose tickles. Probably cat hair. Well, among other things, he does talk about Philip K. Dick. So there. I haven't finished reading it. It's more of a look up the film you like or look up the director you like. It has a very good index and table of contents. You see, film, moving pictures don't really move. They show you a series of still photographs so fast that they appear to move. So it's a flickering reality. And you might have noticed that if you watch silent films of the early 20th century, they seem jerky. Well, you see, the projector played the film faster than the camera recorded it. So the camera would probably run at 24 frames per second, but the projector would run at 26 frames per second. That's just one example. It might be even, the camera might be even slower than that. Now, today we are able to play the films at the same speed at which they were recorded, but apparently that was standard at the time. Who the hiss is calling me? I'll answer it. Hello?
Hello, Michael?
No, you have a wrong number. Sorry. It didn't say spam, so I went ahead and answered it. Michael? Do I sound like a Michael? Hump. Well, anyway, he talks a lot about Philip K. Dick films. So let's look at, yeah, he mixes his astrophysics with it too. Theoretical physicist. In other words, he didn't work in the lab or look through a telescope or a microscope. He just read books and wrote books and did a lot of math. Anyway, let's get to the book. When we think of this shifting reality, we must also take into account the considerable intellectual shocks that arose from science during the 20th century. Those included the abandonment of our conventional assumptions about space and time following Einstein's theory of relativity, the acceptance of inherent uncertainty within quantum theory, and the presence of chaos at the heart of order as shown by chaos theory. Add to this such technological innovations as virtual reality and a world circumnavigated close to the speed of light by the internet, and it is no wonder that our senses are reeling and our hold on reality is weakened. I'm sure that many of you, like Philip K. Dick, have experienced glitches in the matrix. Sorry for the coughing. I'm not ill. And this is just what cinema can do best. It can explore the limits of reality. It can bring us face to face with other worlds and other modes of perception. It's what happens when I either eat corn candy or drink soda. Take Richard Linklater's Waking Life, for example, his 2001 film, Waking Life. It is a film that explores the age-old philosophical question that has cropped up in all the world's traditions. Are we awake, or is this all a dream? The Armenian mystic Gurdjieff compared us to people who are asleep on a runaway horse. It is possible to wake the rider and alert him to the precarious nature of his position, but then just as quickly he falls asleep again. So is this world of ours totally concrete? Is reality totally independent of our desires and wishes? Is it somehow a construct of our minds, an illusion, a waking dream? These are the sorts of questions posed in Waking Life and enhanced by a particularly brilliant touch. And it goes on about Waking Life, but that's page 17. When you get to page 18, skipping down, the same effect is used in Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly, the 2006 film. Yes, Anthony Peake proposed that Phil had epilepsy. It wasn't epilepsy, but I don't know what it was. Definitely not epilepsy. Okay, so back to the book. I like to peek in on the chat from time to time. Anthony Peake is really brilliant. I simply disagree with him about epilepsy. Okay, the same effect is used in Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly, the 2006 film, based on the novel of the same name by Philip K. Dick. And here I should add that, of all authors, Dick must be at the top of the list for the number of his novels and short stories that have been made into films. A Scanner Darkly, Blade Runner, Minority Report, Paycheck, Imposter, Screamers, Total Recall, and Next, to date, with others in the works. Yeah, Screamers is highly underrated. It's a good film, but Imposter, I don't know why Imposter is not more widely shown, and Imposter is amazing. It's a great film. If it had the budget of a Blade Runner, it would be a box office hit. No doubt about it. Okay, this leaves out the Adjustment Bureau because I think it came out after this book was written. Well, anyway, in many ways, Scanner is an autobiographical work written just after a period when Dick's home had become an open house for drug users and he felt he was under surveillance by the FBI. Dick's house had been burgled, and one theory had it that Dick himself had staged the robbery. After spending time in Canada, where he was on suicide watch at a rehabilitation center, he returned to California, where he experienced what? A vivid hallucination? The voice of God? A transmission from an alien intelligence? At all events, this and his other experiences were transmuted into some remarkable fiction. And by the way, I introduced this by saying it's from the perspective of a cinematographer. You'll find that most clearly in the appendix. Oh, it's chapter 11, but it's titled Appendix, The Grammar of Film. And it explains things like flashbacks and zoom and dollies and sound and voiceover, editing and montage, jump cut, and so forth. But here in this chapter 1, he's really into the story. It goes on about a scanner darkly. Where'd it go? He has Blade Runner as 2 words, and I was positive that the original movie had it as 2 words. Now it's always 1 word, Blade Runner. Okay, page 83. I was back on 17 and 18. Let's see what he says about Blade Runner here. On page 83. As noted earlier, when it comes to film, Philip K. Dick is never far away, and so we have Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, the 1982 version of Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The film is set in a cyberpunk future where robots, which are called replicants and built by the Tyrell Corporation, have become almost human but are programmed to have a short lifespan. Well, let's not go too far into summary of the movie. Let's skip a little. Today we also face the issue of political correctness. Now remember, this was published in 2011, 10 years ago. Political correctness, which makes it unacceptable to characterize certain racial groups. Of course, all this can be subverted in comedy. Not anymore, people. Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog, The Code of the Samurai, a 1999 film, features Forrest Whitaker, a black hitman who attempts to follow the ancient Japanese code of the samurai. When the daughter of the local mafia boss witnesses one of his executions, the hitman becomes expendable. At a meeting of the local mafia, at a meeting, the local mafia boss asks for the name of the person involved. When told it is Ghost Dog, he finds such a name hard to believe until he is reminded that rappers also give themselves curious names, such as Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, and Q-Tip. These sound to the mafia boss like, in quotes, Indians, who also call themselves by such strange names as Red Cloud, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Running Bear, and Black Elk, after agreeing that N-word and Indians, I can't say that word, are all the same. His lieutenant is ordered to bring in his assistants, Sammy the Snake, Joe Rags, and Big Angie. So it's funny, he laughs at these funny names, and his lieutenants and assistants have equally strange names. Anyway, it's a great book. It has, for example, um, a chapter on musicals, a chapter on, well, a chapter titled Directors with a section about Hitchcock, one about Stanley Kubrick, one page about David Lean, 2 pages about Orson Welles. Let's go to Orson Welles on page 167. I recommend this book. Even if you don't just sit and read it, it's great for research or just picking up information that you want. Orson Welles. Could someone who knew nothing whatsoever about the technical aspects of filmmaking make a good movie? Would it not be a disaster? One would assume so, but I do recall hearing a talk by a physicist who had won a Nobel Prize. It is often said that the best work in science is done when a person is young, but the speaker suggested that it was more to do with a mind coming afresh to a new subject and being willing to ask questions. In his own case, he had changed fields in mid-career. He was not young when he came to his new topic, but his mind was open and he was willing to question what others were doing, and so he produced work of Nobel Prize quality. And so it may have been with Orson Welles, who walked into a film studio with no preconceptions of what could or could not be done. Well, I beg to differ. It was his cinematographer, Greg Toland, who isn't mentioned in here, who made it happen. Let's skip down a bit on page 168. Citizen Kane is innovated in many other ways. I want you to buy the book. Take the scene when the reporter is interviewing Kane's second wife, Susan Alexander. We are above the nightclub, looking over roofs. We move towards an open skylight and pass right through it and down into the club itself. Each time I see that shot, I ask myself, how did Welles do that? The nightclub roof and skylight were models. The interior of the nightclub was a real set. Finally, here we go. Welles was assisted by an outstanding cameraman, Greg Toland, who had been experimenting with lenses and lighting, and in particular with increasing depth of focus. In one shot, for example, we see a bottle of poison close to the camera. Then in the middle ground, Kane's wife lying on the bed, and in the deepest level of focus, Kane walking into the room. All the elements are co-present, thanks to deep focus, rather than requiring 3 different shots edited together. The oppressive figure of the powerful Kane, the wife who may have committed suicide, and the means of her attempt, a poison that symbolizes her marriage to Kane. I think that's enough. So you see, it's a quite readable book. It isn't just a bunch of technical stuff. It's getting warm. It is August after all, but okay. Oh, and by the way, my shirt says, I have seen the gates of hell. On the back, you'll see the gates of hell. That's the best I can do to show it to you. It's an image of a sculpture by Rodin, a bronze sculpture of the gates of hell modeled on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where there's a man like this looking into the gates of hell and look of horror on his face. I just got this at a yard sale. This shirt. I love it. I wish I'd been to the Louvre to see the gates of hell, but I've never been anywhere really. The farthest I've been from home was Denver, Colorado, so I could go to Fort Morgan and see Phil's grave. Anyway, when you see and there's more than one, but the Rodin statue of the thinker, there's famously one on the grounds of UCLA, the university. Originally, it was the figure of the guy looking into the gates of hell, and of course, the thinker is not looking at hell. Anyway, let's see. I will, after this podcast, I will be out of my so-called high-speed internet, so I don't know whether I'll have a good show next week. It might, when I'm just running on data, it might be too slow to have a good connection. I can't believe it, though. Friday the 13th. I was telling myself, Friday the 13th is just another day. Last Friday. Nothing special happening. Boy, was I ever wrong. I gotta put curtains on that other window. It's making the glare. Actually, I have to move the computer and desk to another position, but not right now. Afghanistan. We were there for 20 years. 20 years. For what? Our military killed bin Laden 10 years ago. Let me type in the chat room. Oh, God. That's when it began. Helicopters evacuating the U.S. Embassy. People desperate to get on jets to fly out of the country. I got eye itchies. Sorry about that. Itchy eyes drive me crazy. It's horrible. The Taliban took the capital, Kabul, Afghanistan, and they're going door to door to kill men and take women and young girls as their wives, whether they want to marry a Taliban or not. One of the news clips I saw this morning showed a woman reporter in Afghanistan. She was wearing a burqa. Good move. I mean, if you have to be a woman in Afghanistan, you darn well better wear a burqa now. And I kind of understand now why the really strict Muslims don't want women to show their hair. It's the weirdest thing. It's something they share with the ancient, well, not just ancient, the Orthodox Jewish idea of modesty. An Orthodox Jewish woman, a really strict one, will not leave the house without covering her hair. And in many cases, they actually cover their hair with a wig. So it's still hair. Well, Michael Heiser explains it in several of his videos. Dr. Michael Heiser. He is a Christian, evangelical Christian, but he's also a scholar. And I don't agree with everything he concludes from his research, but his research is solid. And apparently, in ancient times, they thought that a woman's hair helped her to get pregnant. So a male looking at her hair would be instinctively attracted to have sex with her. My mouse is misbehaving. Oh no, don't do that to me, you evil thing. Here we go. So apparently a woman's hair was seen as a sex organ. It also explains why, at least until recently, Catholic women always covered their hair. They wore hats, or if they didn't have a hat, they'd pin a handkerchief over their hair when they went to church. Some women still do that. So apparently, yeah, they always told us women paid more for haircuts because they had longer hair. But since the 60s, when men started growing their hair out and having ponytails and so forth, that fell by the wayside. Women also pay more for dry cleaning their clothes. And all the clothes are just dumped into the same machine and all washed together. Ridiculous. What a world. Well, I pay more if I get a really good haircut. I've learned, actually quite recently, because my hair tends to be curly. When it's long like this, you'd call it wavy. But not every hair cutter knows that when you stretch it out, you don't go ahead and snip it. You have to release it and then hold it down and snip it because it's curly. The edges will come out ragged if you don't release it and let it spring back because it's curly. When I have my hair short, you can see how curly it is, but it drives me nuts. The curls will get into my ears and tickle me, and I have cowlicks all over the place, 2 in front, 3 back here. I even have a cowlick in this eyebrow. You'll catch me doing this a lot. It's because the cowlick has gone sprawling and it's bothering me. Anyway, so covering your hair kind of makes sense if that's what you believe. I wear hats because I get a sunburn on the top of my head if I don't. I mean, my hair probably doesn't look thin to you, but I have about half as much hair as I used to have, and I don't want to go bald. I can tell, especially when I brush it or comb it, there isn't that much hair anymore. Anyway, A Flickering Reality for you latecomers by F. David Pete. It does have a lot about cinematography and directors and stories, but it also has that, whatever it is, it's almost mystical. Oh, I did want to mention The Matrix. He does talk about The Matrix. Well, it's all over the place, all through the book. I'll just go to the first mention of it. Maybe film is deepest when it is commenting directly on the nature of reality. If one looks to other cultures, particularly those from the East, there is the suggestion that the hard and fast reality we experience around us is a form of persistent illusion. In Sanskrit, Maya. In ancient Hindu philosophy, a god can cause a human being to believe as real what in the end turns out to be an illusion, which, after all, is nothing less than the plot of the Wachowski brothers' The Matrix, the 1999 film. There's all kinds of nuggets in this book. I'm not reading it cover to cover. I'm looking up in the index things that interest me. When I go forward like this, I'm trying to read the chat. What I have here is white text on a black background, and it's driving me nuts. But I had to pop it out because it won't load normally. I don't know why. I have a feeling that YouTube has decided to shadow ban me. I mean, after my rant yesterday, I expected to get a strike and maybe even get, silenced for a week or so. Apparently, they're just shadow banning me, making life a little more difficult. I don't mind. Well, hi, Sleepy Dave. Oh, your poor PC. So sorry. So sorry. Well, I do have a power strip, but I think we all should have these UPS devices, uninterruptible power source. It's like a power strip, but with a battery. They're expensive. But if you have a desktop computer especially, they can save your computer. I'm on a laptop, so it isn't as critical. If the power goes out, my laptop has a battery, so I just unplug it from the wall and use it on battery only so that I don't get hit by a power surge when the power comes back on. Of course, I have to remember to do that. One more time. I'm always complaining other YouTubers don't hold the book up long enough for me to read what it says and see the pictures. And on the back, here's author with a I guess it's a pet lion trying to avoid the glare. I guess the glare is mostly on my screen, not my camera. Oh well. Anyway. That was taken in Italy, in Tuscany. Not Africa. Well, maybe he was in Africa when he sat on or next to the lion. It looks like he's just squatting, and he's behind the lion, but the perspective is weird. If I were taking that photo, I'd do it a little differently. Anyway, I still haven't found the book I want to review. I'm also looking for my books that I boxed up together because they're by Gray Barker and John Keel, and they're rare. Some were Xerox pages, on like typing paper or copier paper. So I'm sure some idiot packed those up with all the paper documents that I'm trying to sort through. And some are books that must be somewhere in these bookshelves. I haven't read them yet. They were part of my research for the book I'm writing. I keep threatening to finish writing this book, but I have to finish my story for the upcoming anthology. I had a story in, and a collection of stories by various writers. I had a story in Mirror Maze, and I will be submitting this story for the next anthology in the series, which is called Somniscope. And my story is about nightmares. Somni is sleep, like insomnia. Um, and scope, of course, is to look at, to see. Or it might be another meaning of scope, as in the whole scope of the situation. In other words, the large area. Or maybe small in scope, a small area. Hi, Silverhouse Antiques. So you're writing a book, yeah. Well, the best advice I can give you is to just write it. You can always edit it and organize it and look for typos later. First, get it down on paper. It works best for me when I start with a pen and paper or a pencil and paper. Oh, that's Dave again, eh? Okay. Well, anyway, I did not promote yesterday's video and I did not promote this one, so if you found me, congrats. We are living in a media-produced illusion. Yes, Oswald, you missed the review. I read sections from the book. I might go back to it. It talks about Philip K. Dick, A Scanner Darkly, Blade Runner. It talks about The Matrix, which is technically not a Philip K. Dick film, but it is. Consciousness, the Hard Problem. I read that. Okay. I'm going to do my usual flip through at random. Hollywood endings. While the weather outside may change from rain to sunshine, from hot to cold, from dry to damp, what could perhaps be called the weather inside our bodies is always more or less the same. This is known as homeostasis, which means that body temperature, oxygen levels in the blood, and so on are all kept at the same healthy level. Well, I beg to differ. Sometimes we get sick. Oswald, I never actually saw the gates of hell. Hi, Orville. Orville Nation. Let's see. It was Carl Jung who suggested that something similar happens in the mind. In other words, Jung claimed that the psyche is self-regulating. Thus, a person who becomes neurotic may do so because they have strayed from their true path. For example, they may have become intellectually arrogant, too extroverted or introverted, too influenced by others. An ambitious man who is overworked and neglected everyone around him may have a breakdown in midlife. This breakdown enforces a pause, a period when that person is forced to reconsider their life and where it has been going. In a similar way, we tend to confabulate in our personal lives. We construct stories about events in the past that satisfy us. In other words, while there may be times when we are willing to face a truly traumatic situation, there may be others when we construct a new story around events in an effort to reduce psychic tension. In a way, we may have a tendency to envision our lives with the metaphor of the Hollywood ending, that final account in which everything adds up and we fulfill our desire to live happily ever after. And so he explores the ending of Breakfast at Tiffany's, Splendor in the Grass, New York, New York, The Way We Were. And then he goes on to Hollywood and anti-communism. It's amazing what he covers in this little book. Once again, I'm not ill. I'm not sick. I just cough a lot. It's very readable. I think Phil had crises all through his life, not just in midlife. Hence his 5 marriages. But the big crisis was imposed on him from outside. He was gang stalked. He was oppressed and suppressed. He was psychologically tortured. And he really was under surveillance, and they wanted him to know it. A strange car would park across the street from his house, and a man would sit in that car in the driver's seat for hours just watching Phil's house. Now, this was before I met him, but when we had our little apartment on Cameo Lane, our second apartment, the apartment next door went vacant, and instead of renting it out to new tenants, the landlord, we assumed, but somebody had a bunch of electronic surveillance equipment installed in the vacant apartment, and it included a working telephone. Now, I thought at the time that the landlord was spying on his wife, because I picked up the phone once to see if it actually worked, and I could hear a woman having a conversation on the phone, and the other equipment was recording the phone call. Agoraphobia. Phil developed agoraphobia early on. He had been working as a clerk in basically a record store, and he had to quit because just dealing with people, customers, frightened him so much. Well, let's see, Ralph, the exegesis, Phil was trying to understand some very real but woo-woo experiences that he had. Now, I think it was something like Robert Guffey's Camelio. I've read that book. He sent me a copy of it. Very good book. I had already read his other book, which I've forgotten the name of, and it's no longer inserted right next to Camelio on my bookshelf because of helpful people who rearranged all my books. It was about spies and such. Oh, Robert would be a great guest for Paradox. Dave, maybe I can recommend you. That might help. I can't remember what your name is on Facebook, but I'll find it. You're in my messenger. Hi, Jan, you're late. I'm going to check something. Yeah, I'm out of high-speed internet. I'm on the data connection, but it seems to be working well enough. Well, let's see if I can pull up Camelio. I can't remember where I put it because I still haven't gotten all my books organized the way I want them. Oh, it's in a bookshelf that is hard for me to get to. Never mind. I have to drag some things out to the shed so I can actually walk up to my bookshelf and get a book. I really resent having to find, sort, and organize all the things that I found, sorted, and organized last year just because someone else thought that the things I had organized were mixed up and needed to be mixed up even worse. Yeah, I've been streaming on YouTube for a while now, Orville. Did Phil ever delve into Eastern Orthodox Christianity? Not much. He was definitely aware of the Orthodox Church. Camelio is a great book. I forgot what the other one was. Oh, I remembered. Cryptoscatology by Robert Guffey. It's primarily about, well, advertising, but what's the word? Propaganda. He studies propaganda. Let me see. Where is my freaking mouse? The mouse keeps going to sleep. Here we go. There we go. Well, I've been on for nearly an hour. This has by the way, a chapter on the, I think we call it the Hays Code, where you couldn't, for example, a husband and wife had to have separate beds. Oh, it has stuff about the Truman Show. A Flickering Reality. It really is about film, but it's also about illusions and mysticism, and the back cover says, "Is our life no more than a vivid dream? Could we travel through time or fall through a wormhole in outer space?" From quantum theory to depth psychology, our understanding of the nature of reality has been turned on his head, and there is nowhere better to experience this directly than when dreaming in the dark at the movies. David Pete's new book presents an exciting challenge and the opportunity to explore new visions through the medium of film. I really like this book. Okay, I'll hold it up again. A Flickering Reality. And the subtitle is Cinema and the Nature of Reality. But I also like Robert Guffey's books. So the first one I read was Cryptoscatology, and the second one was Camelio. Awesome books. And Camelio gave me more ammunition for my belief that someone was transmitting words into Phil's head, like the voice of God technology that the CIA bragged about, that claiming that they transmitted the voice of God into the heads of the Iraqi soldiers telling them to lay down their weapons and surrender, or lay down their guns and go home. Catharism. Yeah, the Cathars were among the flagellants, I believe, the people who would whip themselves because they were sinners. Yeah. Eon Bite is a great YouTube channel, too. The Cathars, of course, were murdered by the Inquisition. I can't say that without thinking of the Spanish Inquisition on, oh, come on, that British comedy that's so famous and weird. The one where they had a blamage walking around in the woods. Monty Python. Thank you, Oswald. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah. Well, it wasn't strictly speaking Spanish. A lot of them were French, and they were Jesuits. And I was shocked to learn that the Franciscans also participated in some of the worst actions of the Inquisition. St. Francis was known for preaching to the animals because they should be saved too. But the Cathars, they owned a lot of property. They had a great deal of wealth in the south of France. And the King of France wanted and needed their property and their wealth. And the Catholic Church kind of felt envious and greedy as well, especially the Jesuits. So they killed them all and took their land, took their castles, took their wealth, their homes. And the first time I heard of the Cathars was that book about the priest at the turn of the 20th century. Priest in the south of France in a poor parish suddenly became wealthy. God, I am losing it. Can't remember the name of the book, and I don't know where my books are. He is discussed in, was it Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or, well, anyway, it has to do with a painting by a French artist. I want to say Poisson, but that's fish. That's French for fish. Poussin, of the shepherds of Arcady. Oh, they want the laurel to turn green. Well, anyway, apparently the Cathars had a great treasure, and at their last stand at Montsegur, a few of them managed to escape with something. Ostensibly their treasure. Don't know what it was. But people have been, well, not so much recently, but they've been caught trying to dig up treasure in this little French town. I can't remember the names of things. Not even the book about it. Learned about it from Art Bell back when he was doing his own show on the radio. And I mean a radio, not the internet, a radio. I used to listen to Art Bell every night as I went to sleep. At the time, I suffered from insomnia, so I'd lie there listening to Art Bell until I finally fell asleep. And that was one of the big topics. I don't know. Everybody wants to find the treasure of the Cathars, and one theory is that it was a direct blood descendant of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. I don't buy that one. I just don't see evidence that Jesus was married to any woman. And Mary Magdalene was important as a disciple and the leader of the women disciples. Remember, the women were separate from the men, and that was their culture. But it's almost certain that these women fed the male disciples and fed Jesus and contributed money to the cause. It's never explained how Mary actually owned property and had income without being married. That was unusual for that culture. Oh, the wildfire smoke has cleared. Good. Good. Yeah, a friend of mine came down from Puget Sound. He lives on an island there. And he was delighted to have some air that wasn't filled with smoke. I'm far enough south that we don't get a lot of smoke from the Dixie Fire, which, by the way, is not from global warming. It's from an electrical transformer. A tree fell on it, and the transformer exploded and set everything on fire. And the fire spread because all these crazy environmental regulations would not allow anyone to clear the brush that is feeding the fires. The brush, the dry, dead brush, and the dead trees. Here where I live, we can't get a permit to have goats come in and eat the brush for fire prevention. However, nearby, down near the bottom of the hill, as we say, because I'm like 4,000 or 5,000 feet up, down there, our local, they call themselves an Indian tribe, the Native Americans, the Morongo Casino Indians, San Manuel Mission Indians. They own a big chunk of land down there, and they have goats out eating the brush on their property because they're a sovereign nation and they don't need a permit from the county or the state or the federal government. And you know, there's a funny thing about them having goats. There aren't any fences. I'm sure the guy is herding the goats. He probably has dogs, but you know, those goats might wander off the property a little bit here and there. in any case, that did save our bacon recently when some people at the homeless encampment down there apparently were trying to cook a meal on an open fire and it got out of hand. We need to help the homeless people, if for no other reason than that so they won't burn down our mountains and our forests and our homes. We do what we can up here on the mountain. We try to provide shelter. Some don't want it. So we'll provide cooked food for them so they don't have to light a fire in the middle of July or August when it's hot and dry. I personally know some of these people. They camp in tents, or some have cars or even RVs, a van or a camper shell on a pickup truck. Most of them are good people, but there's a good share of drug addicts and petty criminals. I think I'll get a Ring doorbell. I'm just concerned. I think you have to subscribe and pay them every month. So maybe I'll just get a camera that records and I don't have a monthly fee. Well, thank you, Orville. We do what we can. And sometimes these homeless camps do need to be cleared out. The areas cleaned up, and they're back before you know it. But unlike Los Angeles, most notably Venice Beach, we don't have filth on our sidewalks, on our, well, we have lakes, so beaches. We don't let it pile up. And there's a project in progress now to build what they call tiny houses to house at least some of the homeless, those who don't want to be out camping in a tent, especially in winter when it snows. And I looked at it, and those tiny houses they propose are about the size of the house I live in. Maybe a tiny bit smaller than mine, but not by much. My house is basically a box 20 feet long and 20 feet wide. You can't have two people side by side in the bathroom or the kitchen. They're too narrow. Yeah, well, so far, the guy across the street has cameras because he's what we call a weekender. He lives and works in Los Angeles and has a second home up here. And then I have good neighbors on both sides there's usually somebody home. So I haven't had a lot of trouble. And I'm telling you, I haven't had to actually use it, but for home defense, if someone breaks in while you're at home, a disposable fire extinguisher. Unlike pepper spray, it isn't going to blow back on me and make me choke and suffer. It'll definitely deter a burglar and make it easy to identify the perp. And unlike actual weapons, I don't care if the police take it as evidence when they finally show up. It's disposable anyway. It served its purpose. Plus, it's there in case my stove catches fire, you know. Oh, what the hiss? Potential spam. I'm telling you, nobody calls me. Those few who I know usually send a text message. Ah. Oh well. It's just I've never had to use it. There's one guy, I don't know whether he's homeless or just nuts, but he'll sit behind the local gas station, which incidentally is right behind my back fence, and cuss out his imaginary friends. So far as I know, he doesn't commit crimes other than using illegal drugs. But in the current, well, actually, since Governor Brown's first term as governor, Jerry Brown, which would have been what, around 1980, he cannot be forced to get mental health treatment unless he's provably a danger to himself or others. And I guess cussing a blue streak at imaginary friends doesn't qualify, but I wish he could get some help. It used to be that if you were proven to be a drug addict, you would go into rehab and it wouldn't cost you a penny. And when you got out, most counties in California would give you a monthly stipend, kind of like welfare. Whether it was alcohol or illegal drugs, you'd get free rehab, and when you got out, a monthly stipend to set you up on your feet. Rent a place to live, look for a job, etc. Now, you're looking at $50,000 for 1 month of rehab, and it might take more than a month. Nobody has that kind of money. If they did, they wouldn't be homeless. They wouldn't be on the street looking for drugs. They'd live somewhere. Well, it worked for some people that I knew. It worked temporarily for my oldest brother, but he ended up drinking himself to death mainly because he was suicidal. When I went to Chapman College, tuition was nothing. I did my first 2 years at the junior college. And it cost me about $15 for each semester. They didn't charge tuition actually it was a community college, a 2-year college. They didn't charge tuition, just fees, and they were quite reasonable. When I went to Chapman College, my tuition, they had terms instead of semesters, but it's the same thing. It cost me $600 for each term. When I did my master's degree, it was something like $1,500 for each term. Now Chapman College is Chapman University. I don't know what it costs to go there, and I don't want to know. I do know that they don't pay their professors, not even the tenured ones, what they deserve to earn. I've worked for them. Anyway, yeah, when I finished my master's degree, I did a bachelor's and then a master's. All my student loans combined were less than $20,000. By the time I gave up trying to pay them off and I refinanced my home and paid them in a lump sum, it was $35,000. It was more than double what the balance was when I graduated, even though I'd been making monthly payments. The balance kept getting higher and higher. I could see a point where I would die and they'd take everything and it wouldn't be enough. Well, I lost my home in the crash because that added $35,000 on my mortgage made the payment unattainable because of the crash. I suddenly had, no income. Anyway, I'd love it if college cost that now too, what I think about. Well, I ended up with this little, I call it a cottage. It was a mountain cabin that originally did not have a kitchen. It was built around the turn of the 20th century. I think 1905, maybe 1910, I keep forgetting. But originally, it was for the employees of the logging company. They didn't cook their own food, or if they did, they'd just build a fire outside, kind of like a barbecue. They ate at the logging camp. They were fed at work, so they didn't have to come home. It was just a place to sleep. It has a kitchen now. It's very narrow, but it has one. It's an add-on. Anyway, it's a tiny house. In a way, it's good. I can tell people, no, you can't stay overnight. I don't have room for you. It's true. And I'm a bit of a hermit. I do okay in small groups or one-on-one. But once a month, I have to go to a Lions meeting. I'm a member. And I just have to convince myself I'm just at this table with one or two people looking at me. The rest of the room does not exist, or I go nuts. And even so, I have to leave the room once in a while. They think I'm going out to smoke, but I'm really just getting out of there. Yeah, exorbitant cost of college was made possible by all the financial aid from the government and the problem, oh, you can borrow the money. You can get a student loan. You don't even have to be a good credit risk. It's government guaranteed. The problem with that is those are loans. They're not free money. And the colleges and university are taking most of the money that you borrow, if not all of it. I mean, I worked while I was in college. I have not read The White Goddess by Robert Graves. Phil had a book of poems by Robert Graves. I think it was poetry. I don't think I got that book. I think someone else got it. Hi, Doggerland. Free education in Denmark. Yes, and in Denmark, in most of Europe, yeah, college is free, but you have to be good enough. In this country, anybody can go to college. When I was teaching in college, I was teaching some of my students to read and write. I mean, they had maybe a fifth grade level of reading comprehension, and they couldn't spell anything to save their lives. Zoom interview, very good, Dave. I'm about ready to leave anyway. It's been an hour and a half. But really, that's the thing. Anybody can go to college, but it isn't free. You have to pay for it. I kind of like the idea of getting a solid basic education so you're good enough to go to college. I'm not going to stick around. I'm hungry. I haven't had breakfast. But I've enjoyed this chat room. I've enjoyed talking with all of you. And what I think about, I never went into rehab. I mean, they don't have it for cigarette smokers. I don't drink. Occasionally I'll have a glass of wine with dinner if I'm not driving. So I'm not a teetotaler, but I'm not a drunk. And I'm just not interested in drugs. I don't need drugs. I was born this way. Ah, yeah, it's almost lunchtime. I do need breakfast or lunch or something. Anyway, I guess YouTube didn't flag me for yesterday's rant about Afghanistan and all that. Oh, yeah. Oh. Yeah. Well, I don't go to many indoor spaces or public spaces. Well, thank you all. Did I type that yet? No, I didn't. I gotta type. Thank you all for listening. I'll catch you next week, if not sooner. Come on, mouse. As much as I enjoy not having a big old cable on the end of my mouse, The wireless one keeps going to sleep. And I absolutely hate the mouse pad. It never does what I want. It just causes weird things to happen when I'm trying to type because I might accidentally touch the mouse pad or hover over it. I mean, I can pound on it, it won't do what I want, but I just kind of hover over it without touching it and it does something. Okay, you guys have a great week, a great day, a great week, and a great life. And don't worry about the end of the world. If it does come, there's nothing we can do about it. And if it doesn't come, then we wasted our time worrying about it. Cat hair. My house is full of cat hair again. Oh well, and Tora didn't even come and say hi to her adoring fans today. She hates that. Okay, catch you all later. Bye.